Today is the 30th Sunday of the year. Our gospel text is from Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 16. We're coming to the end of the so-called travel narrative. And here we have one of the better-known parables of Jesus, the Pharisee and the publican. A word of warning. None of the parables should be taken as if it was a moral fable. Behave like this. Do the right thing. Pharisee bad, publican good. Avoid the behavior of the Pharisee. Align yourself with the behavior of the publican. If we go down this route of moral fables, we will miss the profound, complex depths of this parable, both moral and mystical. We need to situate it, indeed all our readings in the Bible need to be situated in the context of Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. There on Mount Horeb, later called Mount Sinai, Moses encounters the living God in the symbol of the burning bush. He hears the revelation that becomes the golden thread of the Bible. I am with you. Everything in the Bible relates to that in one way or another. When Moses asks who is the subject of this promise, who's making the promise, he gets a non-revelation by way of a revelation, or a revelation by way of a non-revelation. I am who I am. The one who is present to us is sovereign mystery. In the Hebrew tradition, the Shema is a core prayer. If you go to chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, verses 4 through 9, you'll find the beginnings of that prayer. It is so named, Shema, after the first word, which can be translated as hear or listen. Hear or listen, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. An affirmation, a reminder, a mnemonic to the people of this Sinai, this revelation in the burning bush, that the whole of life is to pivot around the presence, sovereign, mysterious. In the book of Exodus again, chapter 20, verse 2, the introduction to the Decalogue. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. You shall have no other God but me. Again, an affirmation, the sovereign mystery presence. What a travesty it is, then, if we focus our response to God on ourselves, especially the petty details of our lives, our wishes, our so-called moral triumphs. Prayer is being present to the presence and taking the consequences of that. In the teachings of Jesus, this presence to the sovereign mystery presence takes on a remarkable, paradoxical quality, a quality of intimacy that's not there in the Hebrew Scriptures. The intimacy comes in Luke chapter 11, verse 2, with the instruction, when you pray, when you're present to the sovereign mystery presence, say, Father. This is a most intimate address. And Jesus is saying, yes, that's your relationship. That's where you stand in the company of God, in the community of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. St. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 16, says, our spirit and the Holy Spirit bear a united witness that we are God's children. So we call God Abba, dear Father. The presence is everywhere, all the time, in all people, events, and things, waiting. The mystery, sovereign presence waits for us to say yes, to open our hearts, to be alert, to be attentive. I'm going to conclude with a brief quotation from a man who was a lecturer at Duquesne University when I was there, and he's a biblical scholar. If you know the Jerome Biblical Commentary, he was one of the three experts on Judith, Esther, and Tobit. Father Demetrius was his name, Father Demetrius Dama, Benedictine, a wonderful man and a wonderful scholar. In his book, Flowers in the Desert, it's out of print now, but you can get it on Kindle. I thoroughly recommend it. He has a brief section towards the end of that book on contemplation. Now, as I understand it, the contemplative approach has at the very heart of it listening. We want to be alert. The intent of contemplation is being awake to the presence, being present to the presence. That can be available to us anytime, anywhere, any circumstances. And so of the contemplative life, of this way of living, Father Demetrius writes, it will become more and more evident that the richest source of goodness in our lives is not that small and shrinking part of life that can be understood and controlled, but rather that enormous and growing part of life that is largely incomprehensible and well beyond our control. Thus we will be able to renounce finally the remnants of idolatry, by which we try to remove the threat of the unknown one, by reducing him to our own finite measurements, and we will be able finally to rejoice in and give thanks for the fully sovereign, terribly mysterious, and wonderfully gracious God of reality. As we move into this wilderness land of mystery, where trust counts for everything, we'll dare to notice our own radical contingency and no-thingness, because we will be now in the presence of the allness of God,